Enjoy the company hoodie and gift card, she said, all nasal and smug, like her buttocks hadn't settled right and was choking out basic empathy. That's how I knew it was happening. Kenzie, the CEO's nepotism experiment in overpriced flats, was firing me. In front of the whole damn company. No warning, no write-up, no can we chat in private? Just a bright-eyed performance during our quarterly all-hands, right between announcements about the new kombucha flavors and the Q3 burn rate. I stood there, hands folded, watching her pretend to read from a script she definitely didn't write. Samantha has been a valued member of the Viron family, she cooed, like she wasn't about to butcher me with a grin. But due to performance misalignment and shifting culture priorities, we've decided to part ways. She reached into one of the stupid culture crates we give to interns and pulled out a hoodie, my name scrawled on the tag in Sharpie like I was a lost and found item. Tucked inside was a $50 gift card to a juice bar that doesn't even exist in my zip code. Oh, she added like she forgot. And unfortunately, your Q4 bonus didn't meet the updated KPI rubric, so it won't be awarded. Updated KPI rubric? Lady, I wrote the original KPI rubric. I could feel 46 heads swivel in slow motion. Sales guys awkwardly tugging at their collars, the intern in the front row pretending to check her phone. The only one who didn't flinch was our CFO, whose expression read, "Don't drag me into this, I already bought a boat." So I smiled. That same calm, "don't worry I won't sue" smile that HR people fear deep in their crunchy granola souls. I took the hoodie like it was radioactive, held it up, felt its weird, scratchy polyester judgment. "Thanks for the memories," I said. My voice was steady, even friendly, not because I wasn't furious, but because fury is for amateurs, and I'm a professional. Before we go on, a quick favor: if you're still listening and you haven't subscribed or liked yet, do it now. Seriously, 90% of people don't. And it's the kind of thing that keeps this storytelling crew caffeinated and dangerous. Plus, it helps us keep exposing these corporate clowns. Anyway, back to Kenzie's little theater of humiliation. I walked out without slamming a door. That's important. They want a meltdown. They want a crazy woman story to pass around Slack like a meme. I gave them nothing. Just a quiet click of my heels on the floor and the faint smell of vanilla air freshener trying to cover up rot. Here's what no one noticed. HR didn't have me sign anything. No exit packet. No NDA reminder. No you acknowledge your termination was fair and legal. Just a cheery, per-written email saying my email would be deactivated by 3 p.m. and good luck in future endeavors. That's because they knew. Deep down, someone in that room knew this wasn't clean. Kenzie had been gunning for me since she oozed into the role of chief culture officer, which basically meant professional bruncher with access to payroll. She didn't like that I had influence. She hated that I had history, and she despised that people trusted me. When I flagged a few inconsistencies in the Q2 budget, like $18,000 labeled wellness experiences that mysteriously mapped to her Palm Springs bachelorette party, HR told me to focus on positive forward momentum. And now here we were. I walked straight past the glass offices, where execs pretended not to look. Past the break room, where someone was slicing a celebratory cake for another successful quarter. Past the front desk, where the office manager offered me a pity smile like I had terminal flatulence. Outside, the sky was a cheerful mockery. Blue, breezy, indifferent. I sat in my car and stared at that hoodie. Then I popped the trunk, tossed it in, and pulled out my personal laptop, the one I never logged into from company Wi-Fi. The one with a very specific file stored on a very specific encrypted partition. The file was titled Clause 12.7b Trigger PDF, because Kenzie may have fired me. But I was the one who held the key to the tech stack, and she had no idea what she'd just done. 3 weeks before the hoodie hit the fan, I sat in a booth at a bar that smelled like old fries and cheaper secrets, laptop open, glass of Pinot balancing dangerously close to the edge. Across from me was my attorney, real one, not the corporate yes-man HR wheels out when someone needs to feel heard. Shelley, 42, cynical as hell and wore pearls like they were brass knuckles. She leaned over my screen and whistled through her teeth. "You sure you want to do this, Sam?" I sipped my wine and nodded. They've been treating me like an employee, but I've been acting like an owner. It's time I got some insurance. The insurance in question. A licensing clause buried so deep in our vendor consolidation contract, it practically wore camouflage. See, while everyone was focused on our flashy UX updates and the new sales funnel integrations, I had spent 6 months cleaning up our backend spaghetti code, rebuilding the company's operational spine. Problem was, that spine wasn't proprietary. We'd been Frankensteining together third-party tools, patching them like the tech version of duct tape. So I built a new one. Clean, secure, scalable, and I did it through my own LLC, which had technically been on our vendor ledger for years, listed under ops architecture and platform integration. No one noticed when the invoice changed slightly. No one blinked when I submitted a statement of work that routed licensing rights to my LLC, not the company. And no one, especially not Kenzie, read the legalese about revocation of rights upon improper dismissal of key personnel. It passed through legal like a lukewarm fart in a meeting. Rubber stamped, filed, forgotten. The clause was elegant in its simplicity. If the company terminated me without formal review and documented cause, the perpetual license would self-revoke. Instantaneously. No lawsuit, no messy arbitration, just lights out. Now, was it petty? Maybe. Was it legal? Oh, hell yes. Was it visible to anyone not looking with a microscope? Absolutely not. Kenzie never suspected a thing. She was too busy optimizing culture with wellness initiatives and Slack emojis. The day I finalized the contract, she was doing an Instagram live about her morning gratitude ritual. Meanwhile, I was buying digital insurance that could implode her entire fake kingdom. I tested the clause on a sandbox repo first, ran it through simulation with our external counsel. Not a flicker of red flag, everything checked out, all signatures clean. Even the compliance team, God bless their overworked souls, logged it into the licensing repository like it was just another vendor line item. That's the thing about being quiet. People assume you're harmless. They forget that the quiet ones build the walls they're standing on. After that, I printed one copy, just one, stored it in a fireproof safe in my attic, along with my grandmother's will and the deed to my car. The digital version, AES 256 encrypted and backed up twice, one in a secure drive in Iceland, the other on a flash drive hidden in a lipstick case in my desk drawer. I didn't want to use it, let's be clear. I liked my job. I didn't love the politics, the nepotism, or the way Kenzie treated vendor invoices like her personal ATM, but I loved the systems, the people, the build. But every time Kenzie smiled with those bleached veneers and called me Sambem in meetings like I was her emotional support assistant, I felt the trigger twitch. And when I caught her deleting Slack messages about budget reallocation, I knew the countdown had begun. The thing about clauses like 12.7b, they're quiet bombs. Nobody hears the tick until it's too late. And the best part, that clause wasn't buried under jargon or hidden behind NDAs. It was right there, in English, one paragraph, titled Reversion of Use License upon improper termination. It might as well have been labeled push this button if you're dumb enough to fire me without reading. So when HR handed me that $50 juice card and an off-brand hoodie and told me we're streamlining operations, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just smiled and thought, activate clause. Kenzie floated into Viron like she'd been airlifted from a lifestyle influencer's Pinterest board, designer tote, daily affirmations, and the confidence of someone who'd never had a performance review in her life. No resume, no track record, just a press release announcing her as Chief Culture Officer, a role with all the authority and none of the accountability. Nepo baby royalty, cloaked in pastel blazers and buzzwords. She took over the second floor with scented candles and framed quotes about radical alignment. Then she took aim at me. It started with the little things. My monthly ops reports would be accidentally left off meeting agendas, my name removed from key Slack threads, budget approvals routed to new culture committees that somehow all included her friends from yoga. I'd walk into a strategy session and find my seat missing, literally. Someone had wheeled it out into the hallway. Kenzie didn't attack directly. That would have required spine. No, her weapons were passive aggression and vague jargon, two things she wielded like a toddler with a glitter glue stick. If I raised a concern in a meeting, she'd say, let's reframe that energy, or worse, I think Samantha's perspective is rooted in a scarcity mindset. Scarcity mindset. I was trying to keep the damn company solvent, while she was billing a $900 team connection ceremony that was just a drum circle in the break room. The vendetta was clear. I made her insecure. My competence was a mirror she couldn't crack. Every time I calmly pointed out a flaw in her latest initiative, like the employee empowerment stipend that was just a Venmo transfer to her college roommate for motivational stickers, she'd get this tight smile, nod like I was cute, and say something like, Samantha brings an important legacy lens to things. Legacy lens, like I was a fax machine that somehow still functioned. So I started documenting everything, every deleted Slack message, every accidental double payment to her wellness vendors, every payroll anomaly, especially the time $4,200 went out to someone listed as emotional environment consultant who, upon digging, turned out to be a DJ from Coachella. I created folders, color-coded, time-stamped, backed up to 2 separate cloud drives under fake project names. I even screen-recorded one call where she referred to layoffs as emotional recalibrations and suggested we offset the morale hit by handing out succulents. But I didn't escalate, not yet. HR invited me to mediation. Just a quick sit-down with Kenzie, they chirped, to realign communication styles. I smiled, a big one, the kind that makes HR sweat. Oh, I'm aligned, I said. I'm just not compatible with delusion. Kenzie didn't want alignment, she wanted erasure. And I could see it happening in real time, the way she'd slowly overwrite my contributions with her own PR gloss. In the company blog, she'd talk about streamlining our vendor architecture, like she was the one who renegotiated the fulfillment contracts. She even started taking credit for the very platform, but my claws would soon snap away like a mousetrap on a manicured finger. One afternoon, she walked past my desk with her phone to her ear and said loudly, "Yeah, Sam's great at keeping the trains running, but it's time for conductors who know where we're going." I stared at my screen, smiling so hard my jaw hurt. Because the train she was driving, it was headed for a cliff. And I had the deed to the tracks. It was 11:42 p.m. on a Tuesday when I found it. I'd been combing through the Q4 bonus allocation ledger because something smelled off, like rotting oranges behind a cabinet. We were under budget, yet the performance bonuses were short. Real short. Like we value you in theory, but not enough to pay you short. I clicked into the raw disbursement logs, cross-referenced against payroll, cross-referenced again against project closeout reports. And then I saw it, a series of Venmo transfers. Label, Event Coordination Ops Celebration Amount, $18,750 recipient. Kenzie loves balance, I blinked. Thought maybe this is some placeholder name, a vendor we've onboarded through a personal account? Happens, dumb, but happens. I pulled the vendor invoice ID. Nothing in the vendor system, nothing logged in Billcom, nothing but a line item with a fake vendor code, and a timestamp 3 days before our Q4 bonus notifications were delayed due to compliance review. I clicked through the finance system's audit log. Thank you, access credentials. Tracked the approval flow. Kenzie had manually overridden the bonus allocations to ops, diverted them to this ghost event, and transferred the funds to herself. Labeled it as an employee enrichment initiative, an initiative where she enriched herself. Classic. I printed the report, not emailed, not saved on the company cloud, printed, held it in my hands. I stared at it under the kitchen light like it was a dead rat in a lunchbox. I didn't act, didn't call legal, didn't blast an email or post a Slack nuke like a rookie. Instead, I slipped it into a folder labeled Petty Cash and Petty Queens and set it on my bookshelf next to my old grad school textbooks. Let it marinate because I knew the sword was coming. This just confirmed the hilt was polished. The next morning, I was called into a quick sync with HR. HR's office smelled like lavender and cowardice. Kenzie was already seated, sipping an oat milk latte like she'd earned it. The HR rep, Rachel, poor thing, looked like she'd aged 3 years overnight. She cleared her throat and read from a printed statement, which meant legal hadn't reviewed it or didn't want to touch it. "Samantha, we've noticed a pattern of interpersonal friction and sustained negativity that is beginning to impact the culture at Viron. As such, executive leadership has decided to move in a different direction." Kenzie nodded solemnly, like we were at a funeral for my professionalism. "I know this is hard," she added, with crocodile tears barely pooling. "But sometimes, a fresh start is a blessing in disguise." I stared at her for a full 5 seconds, just long enough to make her shift in her ergonomic chair. Then I stood. No fight, no protest, just calm. "Do I need to sign anything?" I asked Rachel. She panicked. "Oh, we'll follow up with a digital exit packet. No immediate signatures required." Good. That's how I knew they skipped the legal process. No documentation, no cause, no performance review. Just negativity, a vague, cowardly catch-all you toss when your real reason wouldn't hold up in arbitration. I walked out slower this time. Not out of sadness, just control, like a queen leaving a burning palace. Back at my car, I opened my laptop, tethered to my phone's hotspot. Dragged 2 files into an encrypted folder. First one, the bonus theft report. Second, Clause 12.7b trigger PDF. I attached the first to an email addressed to Shelley, my attorney. Subject, Kenzie's retirement fund. The second, I uploaded that to a private Git repo under my LLC's account. A version-controlled time bomb with IP ownership metadata already authenticated and notarized. No need for revenge speeches. No dramatic monologues, just cold documentation. And a clock quietly ticking. Ghosting a company isn't like ghosting an ex. With an ex, you delete the photos, block the number. Maybe cry into a pint of ice cream that tastes like betrayal and freezer burn. With a company, it's cleaner, more surgical. You remove your fingerprints from the glass and let their own greasy mess come into focus. I didn't update LinkedIn. Didn't post some fake optimistic on to the next chapter goodbye with emojis and a Starbucks selfie. No rage post, no cryptic subtweets. Just disappeared. And let me tell you, nothing unnerves a toxic workplace more than silence. I didn't even tell the engineers I mentored. The junior PM who used to ask me if her roadmap made sense, she messaged once. I left it on read. "She'll figure it out, or she won't. That's not my circus anymore." Behind the scenes, Monolith Capital started due diligence for the Series B. $50 million on the table, and suddenly every spreadsheet, every process map, every vendor agreement I'd ever touched was now under a magnifying glass. Except now, there was no me. No ops whisper to explain why vendor Sixa has a 72-hour lead time unless you bribe the scheduler with Girl Scout cookies. No one to decode the maze of invoice routing I'd built to prevent fraud, and ironically to contain Kenzie. I watched from afar, eyes dry, coffee hot. First, the finance team sent a corrected revenue projection, off by $1.3 million. They tried to blame QuickBooks API delays, but the truth was simpler. They never learned the two-step audit process I'd built because I didn't give them the playbook. Not out of spite, out of experience. You don't hand blueprints to people building your guillotine. Then came the tech unraveling. 3 microservices collapsed. Our DevOps contractor, who Kenzie insisted we hire after one vision board session together, couldn't troubleshoot it because the backend schema had my naming conventions, not hers. I documented everything, thoroughly, but in my LLC's repo, not the company's. Clause 12.7b made sure of that. Kenzie, of course, went on a communication offensive. In the weekly leadership video, she called it a growth recalibration phase and said the team was reclaiming operational sovereignty. That's corporate code for we have no idea what we're doing, but we're going to brand it like a spa retreat. Meanwhile, KPIs slipped like ice on tile. Vendor SLAs missed. Onboarding timelines doubled. Customers began tweeting. The trust started leaking. Kenzie blamed culture resistance, claimed the team was unwilling to fully step into the new vision. She said this in a Slack town hall while wearing a sweatshirt that read "do the work," which made me snort coffee out of my nose. HR tried damage control, spinning it as a legacy architecture issue. But legacy architecture wasn't the problem. I was the architecture, and they'd fired me without checking the floor plan. Every missed deadline was a crack. Every investor inquiry about backend reliability was a sledgehammer. And every time Kenzie opened her mouth, she shoved a little more dynamite into her dad's company. Monolith Capital's analysts weren't idiots. They asked questions. And when the answers were vague, inconsistent, or routed through 3 different departments with no clear owner, they started highlighting things. Literally. Yellow highlighter on every missing process doc, every incomplete integration, every contract that referenced tools they no longer had access to. I imagined the boardroom smelled like tension and sugar-free Red Bull. Meanwhile, I was baking banana bread. That's what I remember most about that week. The calm, the soft whir of my KitchenAid mixer, the way sunlight came in sideways around 3 p.m., and how damn satisfying it was to not be in the fire while still holding the matchbook. Kenzie never reached out, not directly, but I noticed a weird uptick in viewership on my old Medium posts. A couple of my code snippets on GitHub got pinged from Viron IP addresses. My LLC website got 6 new visits from Palo Alto in 2 days. And still, I said nothing. No whisper, no nudge, no leak, just silence. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let the wrong people talk long enough to bury themselves. And Kenzie? She was practically handing out shovels. It was a Thursday, exactly 1 week before Viron's big investor pitch to Monolith Capital, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally, I let those go to voicemail, especially now that every spammer with a headset and a dream thinks I need my ducts cleaned or want to refinance my non-existent mortgage. But something about the area code, Bay Area corporate, made me curious. I answered on the 3rd ring. "Hi, is this Samantha Reyes?" I didn't recognize the voice, but the tone was all salt and starch. Legal, external, nervous. "This is Alan Brewster, outside counsel for Viron. I was hoping to, well, informally ask if you might be open to consulting on a few time-sensitive vendor matters. Nothing official, of course, just light guidance." His voice had that uptight lawyer edge, like he wanted to sound casual but was sweating through his shirt. I let the silence drag just long enough for him to start breathing funny. Then I smiled. "I appreciate the call, Alan, but I'm not available for informal anything." He stumbled a bit. I understand, just thought I'd try. We're in final pitch prep and certain items you previously managed have gaps, that's cute. I didn't ask which gaps, I knew. The automated vendor flow system I built through my LLC, not documented. The workaround I installed to prevent fulfillment delays when our biggest supplier's portal went down every Tuesday, also undocumented, because I had warned them months ago. Knowledge management doesn't happen by osmosis. But they let me go without a handoff plan because Kenzie thought culture was more scalable than competence. Alan thanked me anyway, tried to recover his pride, and hung up. That night, I poured a glass of scotch, not the cheap stuff, the bottle I'd been saving for goodbye forever kind of moment, and pulled the manila folder from the back of my filing cabinet. Inside, 1 sheet of paper, crisp, weighted stock, my LLC's letterhead, dated and notarized. Title: Formal Notification of Clause Activation, 12.7b Body. Due to my termination without cause, review, or formal documentation, this letter serves as official notice that exclusive licensing rights to the following tools, platforms, and backend integrations have been revoked in accordance with Clause 12.7b of the signed agreement between Viron Inc. and Ray's Integrated Systems LLC. Access is no longer authorized as of the timestamp of this letter's receipt. I slid it into a certified envelope addressed to every board member, CEO included. No email, no CC, no just following up. Paper tangible, legal, undeniable. Then I booked a courier to hand deliver it to Viron's office first thing in the morning. Not a bomb, a mirror, a painfully accurate one. I knew what would happen next. First, confusion, then panic. Then the frantic boardroom meeting where someone blurts, "Wait, what the hell is clause 12.7b?" I could almost hear Kenzie scoffing. It's probably nothing, just a bluff, but Alan would know. He'd read it. Maybe not then. Maybe not when the contract first passed his desk. But by the time that letter hit the boardroom table, he'd remember exactly where that clause came from, and that it was enforceable, because I'd made sure. I hadn't just signed that clause, I'd filed it separately. I'd registered the IP ownership with my LLC. I had timestamp code check-ins, license keys, and documentation trails that led right back to me. The moment they fired me without cause, that clause became live. Not hypothetical, triggered. They could still demo the product at the pitch. But now, it would be like showing off a car when the engine belongs to someone else. And that someone just repossessed it. I slept better that night than I had in years. Not because I was vengeful, but because after months, hell, years of watching idiots rise on slogans and nepotism while real work got erased, I had finally built a system that protected itself. The irony? I wasn't even mad anymore. I'd let go of that the second HR read the word negativity off a cue card like it was a diagnosis. What I felt now was something cleaner, not revenge, restoration. The boardroom was all glass and hubris. 27 stories up, panoramic view of the bay, one of those expensive conference tables that looked like it belonged in a Bond villain's lair. It was Viron's big day. The Series B pitch with Monolith Capital, the one that was supposed to catapult them from scrappy disruptor to serious player. And Kenzie, she was dressed for the coronation. Cream blazer, designer heels, oversized water bottle with motivational timestamps like "Crush It," and "You're basically opera." Her PowerPoint had animations. She looked like she'd rehearsed her intro in front of a ring light for days. "Thank you for joining us," she purred, tapping her clicker like she was hosting a TEDx for startup nepotism. "At Viron, we don't just build platforms, we architect trust." That line actually made one of the Monolith guys raise an eyebrow, which for investors is basically a full-body scream. The presentation rolled on, slides with graphs, pie charts of projections, buzzwords stacked like a Jenga tower, scalable empathy, culture-forward architecture, emotional throughput. No mention of product stability. No mention of the back-end stack. No mention of the operational chaos boiling under the hood. Kenzie clicked to a slide titled, "The Next Chapter." We've positioned ourselves to triple ARR in the next 18 months through strategic partnerships and proprietary system leverage. That's when Gregory Watts, the lead investor from Monolith, slowly opened his diligence folder. I watched from the back row. Yes, I was there. Gregory had insisted I come, said he wanted technical continuity in the room. The Viron board, too flustered to think long-term, had agreed. Kenzie hadn't been told until this morning. Based on the way she flinched when she saw me in the lobby, I think her soul tried to exit through her pores. But now she was powering through as if my presence didn't matter, as if I were just another potted plant in the corner. Gregory flipped through the folder, page by page, took his time, didn't speak. Kenzie launched into a segment about team cohesion, highlighting our retention rates, ironically peaking the quarter before she arrived. She smiled too wide. Rehearsed charm starting to fray. That's when it happened. She glanced at her phone, face down on the table beside her green juice, lit up like a slot machine. 12 missed calls, all from legal, 2 voicemails, a red dot from the board group chat. She blinked, paused, swallowed. Her voice wobbled ever so slightly as she continued. "And we believe our culture is our moat." Gregory held up a hand. "Before we go further," he said, calm as a surgeon, "can we clarify something?" Kenzie froze mid-slide. "Of course," she said, voice now an octave higher. Gregory pulled out one page, a printed termination memo. "My termination memo." He read silently for a moment. The room went still. One of the other investors leaned forward, eyebrows knitting. "This document," Gregory said, tapping the page, "states that Samantha Reyes was terminated for negativity and misalignment with culture." Kenzie nodded. "Yes, correct." Had philosophical differences. It was a leadership call. Gregory didn't react, didn't even blink. "And was this termination reviewed by internal counsel?" Kenzie's mouth opened, then closed. The CEO, her dad, shifted uncomfortably in his chair, said nothing. Gregory turned to the second page, held it up. "This is a letter from Ray's Integrated Systems, dated last week. Clause 12.7b notification." Kenzie's knuckles went white on the table edge. That clause. Gregory continued, still calm, revokes all back-end platform licensing effective the moment Miss Reyes was improperly terminated. It cites no formal cause. No documentation, no review, silence. No one moved, no one breathed. Kenzie stared at her phone as if it might start explaining things for her. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I sat in the back, expression neutral, like I was waiting for my latte at a crowded Starbucks, because this wasn't vengeance. This was structural failure, and the cracks had just hit the boardroom. Gregory didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He sat at the head of the glass conference table like a man performing a mercy killing. Calm, precise, inevitable. "This termination," he said, holding up the page like a holy writ, "was it approved by legal?" Kenzie blinked. opened her mouth, closed it, looked down at her phone again like she was hoping a different reality might show up between the push notifications. The CEO finally stirred, eyes glassy. HR handled the process. It was a culture fit issue. Gregory didn't even bother to look at him. He flipped to the next page in his folder and held it up with 2 fingers. A signed clause with the title bolded across the top. Exclusive software licensing subject to named key personnel underneath. Plain legal English. Licensing of Ray's Ops backend suite is contingent upon continued employment, without cause-based termination, of Samantha Ray's, hereafter designated as key personnel. Revocation is immediate upon breach. This, Gregory said, placing the document gently in front of him, was filed, registered, and timestamped with vendor agreements dated prior to the initial seed round. He looked around the table. Meaning, when you terminated Miss Ray's, you did so without cause, without legal review, and without due process. You didn't just fire your head of ops. He paused. You terminated the license to your core infrastructure. Kenzie made a sound I can only describe as a gasping squeak. You no longer own your backend systems. The fulfillment integrations, the customer data pipe, the API logic, the vendor stack, the very thing this platform runs on, no longer belongs to you. The general counsel, who had been eerily silent in the corner, stood up so fast his chair wheeled back and hit the glass. His skin had gone sheet white. He grabbed the clause from Gregory's hand and stared at it like it had bitten him. How did this get signed? He whispered. I drafted it myself, I said from the back row, voice cool. Your department signed off during the vendor consolidation last year. I believe it came through during the crosswalk audit phase. Gregory glanced back at me, then returned to the room like a teacher letting the class digest their failing grades. Without this license, he said, you have no legal right to operate the product you're pitching. Kenzie tried to recover. This is just a technicality, no, Gregory cut in sharper now. This is ownership. He pointed at the presentation screen, where the slide still displayed Project Roadmap Q1 2026. This roadmap assumes platform stability. It assumes delivery capacity. You have neither. What you do have is an illegal deployment of software tied to a revoked license, meaning every single investor here is being shown vaporware. Silence. Thick, choking silence. The CTO, who had been quietly praying to the ceiling for the last 10 minutes, buried his face in his hands. The VP of sales stood and walked to the window like maybe he could just keep going and swan dive into the next startup over. The CEO, pale and sweat-beaded, reached for his water, missed, and nearly tipped the whole pitcher. The general counsel finally spoke. We didn't catch this. It was buried. He pointed at me. She knew what she was doing. Yes, I did. I didn't smirk, didn't flinch. Just watched the panic ripple outward like an ink spill in water. Because the product wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. And the pitch they'd rehearsed for weeks, the one they'd banked their Series B hopes on, it just collapsed under the weight of one forgotten clause. Shock doesn't always look like screaming. Sometimes it looks like an entire executive team realizing, all at once, that the quiet woman they called rigid had built a legal cage around their golden goose and just walked away with the key. Gregory didn't slam the papers down. He slid them, slow, deliberate, like he was returning a check that had bounced so hard it cracked a foundation. The CEO stared at them like they were written in Sanskrit. He wasn't blinking, just sitting there, slumped in a chair that suddenly seemed too big for him. Gregory stood. Congratulations, he said, voice soft but sharp. You just lost your company. Kenzie opened her mouth. Wait, she started, rising halfway from her chair, hands flailing with performative urgency. I fired her because she was undermining morale. This was a culture call, not a technical one. You can't just walk away from a pitch over. I hope the hoodie was worth it, Gregory said, not even sparing her a glance. The room didn't breathe. No one moved to defend her. The silence wasn't passive, it was final. He turned, walked to the glass doors, but before he left, he paused, looked over his shoulder and right at me, gave a nod. And then he walked out, leaving $30 million in vapor and board members holding the bag. Kenzie spun toward the board. Can fix this? There's got to be a way to re-establish the license. We'll just talk to her lawyer, but the board wasn't listening. They were already erupting, voices overlapping. One guy threw a pen, someone else shouted, why the hell didn't anyone flag this clause? The CFO looked like he was about to throw up. The VP of Growth whispered, she warned us. I remember her warning us. The CEO tried to stand, but his hands were trembling. He clutched his chest, pale and wheezing like gravity had just remembered to hit him. Legal scrambled for binders, flipping wildly through contract printouts, eyes darting for a loophole that wasn't there. And I stood, quietly. Still in the back row, hoodie folded neatly under one arm like a souvenir from a theme park ride called Nepotism Implosion. I walked slowly toward the door. No theatrics, no head turns. Just calm steps on glossy tile. Right as I passed the trash can near the catering table, I paused. Looked down at the hoodie company logo screen-printed like a participation trophy. Then dropped it in. Didn't even look back. Outside, the hallway was cold and bright. Empty, peaceful. My phone buzzed, new email. Subject, let's talk acquisition, your terms. I exhaled long and slow, not from exhaustion, from release. Because when someone tries to erase your legacy with a $50 gift card and a fake smile, there's only one response: build something they can't replace. And let the silence do the rest. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit him.